Hello, good morning. I got the cat here too, so
Morning. You know it's
Morning.
going to be a good show when you started off by yawning. So we're in for an exciting hour.
I was just thinking, I was like, man, I really should have gotten some coffee during that 5 minute dance break. But you know what? Here I am. We'll get through it. Still getting over a little bit of a head cold. So, how
Oh
are you guys
man. Well,
doing?
sorry to hear that.
How are you guys doing this morning?
So
Tired.
we're doing well. Yeah, we were both traveling to different places. Although mine was pretty uneventful. It sounds like yours was not the case, Amanda.
No, a 5 hour delay, my first time flying Porter. And then I know you like to talk sports, but can I ask a question to begin with that's not sports related, that might be
Absolutely,
heated?
absolutely
Yeah,
not.
let's not talk sports with what just happened to the Mets anyway.
Whoa,
So,
whoa,
what
whoa.
would you say is the etiquette when it comes to who gets the right to get their bag first on the airplane?
What do you mean? Like it's
Yeah,
first in,
what's the
first
Bag,
out.
context?
So like you
take
want
your
a
seatbelt off. Who gets the right to reach up and get the
aisle
bag
seats.
first?
I guess aisle seats, and then
Yeah, but
whoever's
which
in
aisle seat?
front. Oh, I don't know.
I don't know that there's a
Whoever
defined
claims
etiquette
it.
for that.
Who stands up first? Whoever
Whoever,
stands up,
yeah,
that's
that's
the right. So I stand up first, and after being 5 hours delayed, after getting in super late, it's like 1:30 in the morning at this point, 1:45, something like that. I stand up, I go to get my bag, and next thing I know, my head is being slammed into the thing because the guy beside me decides that he wants to stand up too, and he doesn't care that there's not enough room for both of us. And I was like, what is happening? And next thing I know, he shoves his way in front of me, and I was like, okay, guy, we were all delayed the same amount of time. And I was literally like, keep your mouth closed, Amanda, because if you want to talk about a spicy situation, I was like, I was so tired that I wasn't sure I could trust what was going to come out of my mouth that moment. But I was really curious, like, is that a thing? Like, do people just feel like it's like a Hunger Games? Like, whatever happens, it's just allowed?
Yeah, it's gotten bad over the past year or so. In fact, I was just saying in Discord yesterday, like every flight I'm on, you see people like stampeding up from the back, and meanwhile the jet bridge isn't even there yet. But we seem to have diverged from the orderly, like one row at a time exit procedure. It's kind of just every man for himself, just kind of rushing up as fast as they possibly can.
I would say
See, I
the only
like,
caveat to that though is like if your flight's delayed and your connection is super tight. But even then, like use your words. Hey, I
yeah,
have 20 minutes to get to the next gate. Do you mind if I go ahead? And
yeah,
I've
yeah,
I've never had someone say no. I've had other people, hey, me too. Okay, and then like you go. I mean, that's
yeah.
we're
Or
we're
you start
humans.
doing a
We can
comparison of
talk.
whose flight is more like until
Yeah.
like or whatever. But yeah, it was just one of those things where I was like, is this where we've gotten to? Like, but the thing is, like, I agree with you, Matt. Like, usually it's like whoever stands up and then you go like one thing at a time, and it's usually pretty good. This really took me by surprise. One, because of the time of the morning, but also because I was like, I just do you not see me? Like I don't know. It was one of those things where I really had to keep my I knew that if I said something, I would not I have a voice where it's really easy to tell how annoyed I am. So, like, imagine this is the way I sound the day after. Could you imagine in the moment without a lot of sleep and after having already spent a stupid amount of time at the airport? I was like,
Yeah,
don't get started. You won't rein it back.
yeah, I get it. It etiquette's been going downhill for the past couple years. uh, really ever since code. Although everyone in history has said that too, right? That
Yeah.
nobody has etiquette today compared to last year. It's one of those
Well,
perpetual things.
I was wearing a tracksuit, so I don't know. Maybe I'm part
Could
of the
be.
down etiquette.
Well, I just want to
Well,
say
glad
for
you made it
sport
home.
because I don't get to say this very often, but the Panthers are somehow in lead of the division, so I'm gonna enjoy that, and the Avalanche are still in behalf.
Nice.
So sports are good for me right now. Sorry, Amanda.
So yeah, it's kind of an interesting time in Metsland. So Edwin Diaz signed with the Dodgers. Pete Alonso signed with the Orioles. Uh, they seem to be breaking up the core of the team. And I could talk for like a half hour about whether that's a good or a bad thing, but they're both kind of long time, especially Pete, who was a lifetime Met. Um, kind of an interesting time in baseball world. So we'll see, but some strong reaction in the fan base right now. That's where we are.
Well, let's talk on something a little, well, I say a little better, a little more uplifting than the Mets abandoning ship here. Our first story of the day. Do y'all not tier support staff anymore? Hold on, there's two supports there. That almost got me. So my company acquired another smaller company that's using an MSP. The company acquired has a fairly complex vSphere environment, including fairly large vSAN infrastructure. Apparently, the guy that was familiar with the account is no longer with said MSP. We had a storage issue today, and the tech assigned to the ticket to manage for the entire the tech assigned managed to nuke the entire VMFS data store. We're able to restore a snapshot to get things back up and functional fairly quickly. After a short discussion with the tech, we have found that they have little to no VMware experience at all, so we brought the account manager to ask what the heck. We were told a bit condescendingly that these days, those days are long past and that documentation is king here, and if it's properly documented, any of their help desk resources should be able to resolve whatever problem there may be. So, is that true? Is that a true statement? We just need documentation and tiers don't matter anymore, or are we still tiering techs?
There's a lot of context missing from this too. I have questions. You can go first, Amanda.
I'm so bothered by this. Okay, so to be fair, we don't have tiers in the way that maybe other people will. We have what we call a front end and back end team. And the front end team does like the quick tickets. They handle most of the calls that come through. We want to make sure that clients can get resolutions quickly. And if something requires a longer term solution or looking into an investigation, it gets rolled up to the back end team. Nobody's on the back end team unless they are a tier 2, right? So like we do tier in the sense of, like a person's individual skill set, but it doesn't necessarily like it's not a team of and then escalate, like, you know what I'm saying, like in the traditional form. So it's a little bit of a different approach to it. But I don't want to call myself a control freak, because I'm not saying that. I'm not into micromanaging, but I definitely do believe in permissions. I definitely do believe that, people shouldn't be changing firewall settings. Like, we have change management. These things exist for a reason. Just being able to just with admin delete an entire, oh my God, I want to have a panic attack, because obviously the person didn't understand what they were doing. Now, would I pretend that anybody in my MSP hasn't made a mistake like that before? Absolutely not. But I feel like that's just showing the maturity level of the MSP in question, not necessarily really a reflection on the tiers, personally, in my opinion.
But if you have things documented, if you're basically, hey, this is how you manage this VMFS data store, could you not give that to anybody if you have the SOP, the documentation, Matt?
I have a lot of questions on this. So the first thing that comes to mind is, how is this a typical client? And what I mean by that is, for a lot of MSPs, now this person used the phrase complex, right? So I imagine we're not talking about like a little 3-host or 5-host cluster here. We're talking about serious infrastructure and you have to be decently advanced to be using vSAN in the first place at this point, especially given the current state of Broadcom licensing stuff, right? You're talking about some real infra. Now, to me, like, I'm kind of wondering what type of support company this really is. Because for the most part, if you have an MSP working on that kind of infra, like something has gone wrong in triage if the same people who reset passwords and things ended up with this ticket to begin with. So I like that's where my mind goes. Like, there should be some kind of infra team working on this. Not even like, if the help desk got this, it's the kind of thing that to me would jump to like Amanda mentioned, a back end team or an infra team, the same way that you hand off security incidents to the security team. So it's not tiers exactly, it's specialization. And I have to assume, if you have that kind of infra set up for clients, that you have some people on staff whose job is to manage things like, VMware environments or big storage environments or things like that, as opposed to your tier 1. And maybe it's not tier. Maybe tier is the wrong word.
But you know what? To be honest with you, there's some questions we won't get answers to, obviously, because the person's not here being interviewed. But like to your point, though, Matt, I would imagine that this is probably a little bit of posturing, because if you look at the comment, it was like apparently the person who knew it is gone. So like this is probably just the company trying to put them back on their heels, right? Like, well, you know, anybody can do this. We've got the documentation, so it's fine, right? You all know that if we had that one tier 3 tech that knows everything inside and out and they leave, like you panic a little bit, but you also have to like, it's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. Maybe a little bit too much of that in my opinion, because yeah, I've definitely got people on my help desk that I would not let anywhere near something like that. So I don't know. I think this is less like we were both saying, less about tiers and more about like, if you're going to, okay, I'll give you an example. I've got a level 3 technician, and you know why he's a level 3? It's not because he knows everything, but he knows enough to know when he doesn't know something. He knows enough that if he messes around with something, he can get himself back out of it. He puts fail safes in place. A person who's never experienced the level of working with this kind of infrastructure before doesn't understand that part of the process. That is really what is necessary to be dealing at that kind of level. And that's the part that concerns me. When you're changing passwords, you do things really quickly. Like when you're a help desk, you do things really quickly without necessarily thinking about it because it's low stakes. This is not low stakes.
Yeah, you would say almost an escalation path, issue of knowing that, like, not so much, calling them tier 1, tier 2. Like, I'm thinking about our internal infrastructure. We follow ITIL, so we have like incident team, simple request team, security, and there is like a excuse me, a 1 or 2, but I don't know truly what the designation is. But from there, we also have like a cloud infrastructure team and like projects team, and something like that would definitely get escalated up to that, because it's like our service desk is very like defined. Okay, we can do up to this, but anything like outside of that I don't think you can document like all scenarios that would come up with that VMFS data store. It is something that's just knowledge that you have to know how to work the system. So you got to escalate it up.
Well, if you don't have that,
yeah. If you
don't
have,
people, we're going to get to that later in one of the other ones, but you need people who can be able to troubleshoot and have that critical thinking skill set. And until you see that demonstrated in an environment like help desk consistently, and then you bring your technicians up, that's really difficult to just say, yeah, go ahead, do whatever. You want people to stretch, but like not on your client's time. Obviously this costs the client time, and you have to question how that's going to impact your contracts.
I think you might have nailed it, Amanda. I think that based on this discussion, I'm guessing that this was a bit of a stretch capability-wise for the MSP. And that gets into a whole different discussion of if you only have one person to support something, you may not want to do that in the first place. But that aside, I'm thinking that they're using the term complex, and it's actually not that complex a thing. It's just pretty standard VMware architecture. My guess is they had someone set this up, the classic case of like somebody read a book on Exchange and all of a sudden they have like this 10 node cluster set up all over the place, and or somebody reads a book on group policy back in the day, and it was like, GPOs that did 250 things everywhere. I'm thinking that might have happened here, and the person got in over their head and either left or got fired or whatever. And now they're trying to pick up the pieces. And this to me almost gets into a discussion about their standardization or architecture, and that they strayed too far from what they normally do. That's my guess.
And I mean, to that point though, too, Matt, like if you're going to talk about documentation as being your be all whatever, but you don't have the standard to support it, I don't understand how those two compute. You can't say, oh, we have documentation and then it's fine, without having also the back end like operational, but this is how the documentation got created. This is how we decided on this solution and whatever. And I'm not saying that they don't have those, but the way that they've presented it doesn't seem like it. And so I'd have a lot of question marks around that. You can't just single-handedly say documentation covers everything. You need the structure behind it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to our next story here. So this is the end of the year story. So of course we got to be forward looking, and this post allows us to do that. what are your predictions for AI in 2026? So pick your predictions. Pull out your Chat GPT or Gemini or Claude and ask it, hey, what are you going to do in 2026? So our AI stocks going to be more than just hype? Are we going to, fully automate some things? What do we have to worry about or look forward to?
My prediction is that I'll keep being asked this for the 100,000th time so far. I think in 2026, what we'll start to see is the hype dying down a little bit. And what I mean specifically is that I think we'll get away from all of this, hey, here's what could be possible, here's what the future looks like, this very nebulous like AI in the future. And I think we'll start to see some of the utility come out of this and distill down to things that are actually useful day to day. Right now, it's being seen mostly as one, an investment vehicle, and two, it's going to solve all our problems. I think some of that is going to start to dissipate over 2026. We're already starting to see it in the end of 2025. And I think next year will be all about practical, actual use cases. And we're going to see if this is really worth all the hype, or if it's like Bitcoin all over again. I don't think it'll be quite that severe. But I expect to see for most of the year, we're actually doing XYZ with AI, or realizing that some of the stuff we talked about doing just isn't feasible. So there's a cleansing of sorts coming up.
I agree but disagree, but like not really disagree. It's hard to explain. I don't think AI is overhyped. I think it is too conceptual. I think that there's a lot of people that don't understand, one, how to monetize it, two, how to create the structure around it to be able to actually make it go in their business. And I think that as we discover that, because we're starting to see people get traction with it, as we discover what that looks like, I think what we're going to find is a lot of places that go, oh shit, I don't have my house in order, and AI is just going to cause chaos. So when I talk about automation in any of my talks or anything that I've created for it, one of the things I'm really clear about is that you cannot bring IT into human problems unless your human shit is figured out first. And you can't turn around and have AI as a wrapper on something that is garbage, because it's just going to keep being garbage, but it's going to be garbage that's now automated and multiplied. And whatever anybody else wants to say, I will die on the hill that AI is basically automation. So if you're going to be starting to learn how to apply this in your business, what you're going to realize is, wait a second, we need to revisit some of our processes. We need to make sure that, our ticketing systems are the way that they need to be, and that our staff is where they need to be. The basics of what it means to be in this business are going to be put under a microscope, and really make sure that, one, we're adhering to things that are best practices, but also considering how those best practices could be bettered by this technology. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I think, we'll see more and more of that. I was on the Tech Degenerates group call last night, and I believe Eric said, his worry about it is there will be some less mature companies or less mature MSPs that are just hurrying to put in this AI, and then it doesn't do anything, or it makes a mess because, again, we don't have the foundation for it. Data's all over the place on the security controls, whatever that is, right? So now, they're going to get ticked off, leave, another one comes in, AI stuff, and then, by the third time, they're just so burnt out on being forced AI that they just don't want anything to do with it, and they, it just kind of ruins the ecosystem. I don't, maybe that could be a thing. It's weird being trying to be realistic with it, but also, with how hyped it is, and trying not to take a pessimistic view of what a potential can be, because it does have the potential to make a lot of efficiencies, but you have to have the right stuff in order. So I think it's just going to have that further separation of it. I mean, the human in the loop that's not going away. That will still have to be a thing. So getting your efficiencies done with AI to do, 70-80% of the work, whatever, but a human would still have to confirm quality and make sure that things are met and done like that. That won't be going away. From a security side, we've already been seeing AI powered attacks, whether it's malware, whether it's social engineering. Unfortunately, I think those are just going to get worse. The barrier to entry is even going to get lower on those. So, fighting AI with AI is kind of the only thing with that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I know, for us, our focus is like, let's get the house in order and see what efficiency gains we can get with different levels of AI. But I don't know if it can continue the trajectory that it was on this year.
I think what you said was important, Josh. Like we have examples in our history of exactly what this looks like. This is not the first time humans have iterated in this way. You look at the Industrial Revolution and the way that we changed to having factories and how factories, the robots were now going to replace humans and whatever. But really, it did mean some less humans, but it did mean that humans changed what they focused on. They focused more on quality control. And if we use the lessons from the past into what we're doing, it can help us kind of like focus our own internal operations on what's going to work through this next adaptation and change. Sorry, I think I cut you off there, Matt.
No, you're good. Josh, why don't we get the cat's opinion too?
He was staring at us like very, very.
Yeah, he seemed interested.
Yeah. Hey, what do you think about AI, Gannon? As long as he's fed, he doesn't really care. Although I have used AI to make Gannon into multiple children's books for the kids, so that part's.
That is the best. AI, children's stories, being able to put them in it, yeah.
And I have zero artistic ability when it comes to drawing, so I know it doesn't replace actual human art, but for me being able to create something, it's pretty cool.
I do the same thing. I can't draw.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get off the AI train, and let's talk about the culture of IT. So, does anyone feel like the culture of IT has quietly shifted into something completely different? I've been in IT long enough to remember when most people in the field got into it because they were genuinely obsessed with figuring things out. You had people who built PCs in their bedroom, they broke stuff to see how it worked, stayed up late messing with servers, and they just ended up in IT by accident. You learn by getting your hands dirty, asking tons of questions. Lately, though, it feels the whole vibe of the job has changed. A lot of the new faces coming in don't seem interested in the work itself, just the title, the salary, and the remote-friendly lifestyle. Nobody wants to touch help desk. Nobody wants to troubleshoot beyond the first suggestion. Everyone wants to jump straight to some fancy cloud security job without learning the basics. And the minute something gets hard, they're already asking ChatGPT to spit out an answer instead of trying to understand what's actually happening. Another thing is leadership. It used to be your manager or lead at minimum had done the job you're doing. They could sit next to you and explain why the problem was happening, and they solved it 100 times. But now I see managers who have never touched systems they're responsible for. Some don't even pretend to care. They treat IT like a generic corporate department that should operate like HR or finance. Then there's the pace. Everything's a team message. Everything is urgent. If you don't answer in 5 minutes, someone pings you again. Half the job feels like explaining to non-technical people why something isn't magic and can't be fixed. So, does anybody else feel this way, or is this just the natural growing pains?
I don't know that it shifted exactly. Like, to me, this just seems like someone who's been in the game for a long time. There were stories of the 90s kind of culture of tinkerers and stuff, but you know what, that existed in the 80s, 70s, and 60s too, as long as we've had computers, right? People have been into it and tinkering and things like that. There is some truth, I think, to the idea that people are coming into the field now without having a lot of like infra and troubleshooting experience because everything is SaaS now. But to me, this sounds like someone who is just starting to see like the natural end state of this kind of culture. There were people who always talked about how awesome they were 20 years ago too. Like, it just happens to be amplified because there's LinkedIn now. I don't think that this is necessarily a shift. It may be increasing visibility. Every now and then you do see something useful on LinkedIn, but back in the day it was people would see Slashdot and go find the useful info there. Now, every LinkedIn post is basically, let me tell you how standing in line in Starbucks taught me about managing teams. It's all just garbage, but there was garbage everywhere. And I don't think it's that different now. I think just our visibility into things is allowing that to come through. This person may be in an environment that is not right for him. That's definitely a possibility. But I've seen this kind of thing happen at every job, and I'm sure it happened everywhere before I got into the field as well.
I think, okay, so I'm going to tangent a little bit. I belong to a group called Practical Philosophy. We get together and we talk about these things. And somebody was waxing on about how social media has changed the game. Now, there is some truth to how cyclical things are and how they change. But I feel like it's the role of the previous generation to always look at it and say, "Oh, this is a bad thing," and like, shake their fist the clouds from the porch type of thing, right? But really, it's not that it is bad. It is that it is different than the way it was when you came up. And the difference seems like a bad thing because you don't understand how someone could get to where you are right now. Right. So it is not that it is impossible. It is that it is a different path. And that is the next generations to forge and understand. How do we take the knowledge from the generation before and assimilate it into ours? And how do we use that to plan for the next? Right. And that's the part that's probably not happening in this organization. How do you take the knowledge that this guy has, or I'm assuming a guy because I don't even know why, but this person has, and then turn around and help them mentor those kids, because the reality is true. What Matt said is true. When things are more SaaS based, you have less chances to troubleshoot how it interacts on a server. You're not understanding. I mean, everything's in the cloud as well, so like it's not the same. But as we've seen with some of these data center instabilities, like, it doesn't mean that it's going away entirely. I will die on the hill that there are some industries that will still use on-premise for what they need to do, right? So I think it's important to acknowledge that it's not that it hasn't changed, but that it doesn't necessarily need to change as much, and that it is part of a conversation, right? So if you don't like what you're seeing and you're worried about whatever, instead of being like, this is wrong, bring those ideas forward about what you can share. And I think there's power in that, right? When you're sitting there in that position and you're going, well, it's all changing beyond what I understand, you're really just communicating fear. How do I fit in this new world? And the reality is there's a place for everyone, but we need to be able to facilitate that knowledge exchange and mentorship, really, because those skills are becoming a lost art. But if you look back at all the times that we've been in this position before, somebody went out and searched for those kinds of skills and they still go on with it. I will say, I got like a bunch of people in their 20s that work for me, and they still like pulling shit apart. They still like taking things apart and trying to figure out how they go together. That part's not lost. It's just that they might feel probably a little bit weird for doing it and then have less of a community around it. So like, also, if you speak your mind about what you've done in your experience, maybe the person who feels weird for doing it will actually say, oh, I do that too. And yeah.
Well, I know, again, from the cyber perspective, there is a, and I don't know if this is solely to blame on just, colleges, but there's been over the last couple of years, like, hey, get your bachelor's in cyber, go take this, course, and now you come out with a, 6-figure job. And that's just not the case, because it's not teaching you the understandings of that. And there's been I feel a little bit of an oversaturation of that. But then going back to the troubleshooting, computers are a little bit simpler these days. You're not really having to take them apart or fix things. I mean, it can be you can re-image faster than you can try to fix something weird in the registry. But 10, 15 years ago, you couldn't just do that. It was a big deal. And also, I know with some of the younger members, like, my kids, like, the first time they saw my computer monitor, they tried touching it because they thought it was a touch screen. So first thing is, like, not everything's a touch screen. Simplified user interfaces, computer literacy has almost gone down a little bit from the millennial generation. So it's a different type of troubleshooting, I think. So it's hard to say. I don't fully disagree with this person, but I'm definitely not near as jaded with it. I mean, there's still people want to learn things. It's just, now we have more resources than ever. Again, we go back 10, 15 years ago. You're trying to troubleshoot something. I mean, we might have had Google at that. I think we had Google, but like, you're leading to this forum where somebody had an answer. They posted the same question, and then they're like, never mind, solved. And you're like, what do you know? The XKCD comic, right? So it's had to rely on unlimited resources, but now you have unlimited research that you can do and try in ChatGPT. So I think it kind of hinders the troubleshooting ability, because you're not forced to, well, let's just YOLO and try it and see what happens, and then rely on your experience and how to back out of it.
Josh, thought I would share some bad news with you. 15 years ago was 2010. We definitely had Google.
Oh my God. We sure did. You know,
I don't know,
like
10 years maybe?
Yeah. Before Google, you had like the Microsoft books or the giant binder of CDs from MSDN and stuff, right? Or even Usenet before that.
You know, what's funny is recently I'm working on my a web app for our music podcast. I was working on the co-host. He does everything at Google, and he's like, "All right, cool. They keep everything in one place to send you a Google Chat." I'm like, "What the hell is a Google Chat? Is that still a thing? Is Circle, whatever it was, still a thing?" So I go in there and I see his chat, but then I'm like, "Oh, this is what I used in my first MSP like 18 years ago." So I have like all of the chats that we did like internally, and I was like, I went down memory lane and I'm like, oh boy, did we do some not great things. I'm like cringing a little bit at it.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. We did have Google that long ago. All right, well, let's keep going here. Let's talk about more of the culture, the hustle culture part. What is the industry known for after hours training, looking for best practices? Hey, I'm trying to get a pulse on how other MSPs handle technical training outside regular work hours. Do you expect techs to train after hours, pay them for that time, or is it considered unpaid professional development? Do you offer incentives? Do you build training time into the workday instead? I'm trying to work on a structure that encourages learning without burning people out. So I'd love to hear how your MSP handles it. What's worked, what's failed, what do you consider? So Amanda, I'm sure you have a fantastic answer for this once you start.
I don't know how we can consider in this day of burnout adding one more thing to after hours personally. And I know that that's something that we pay attention to more now than maybe we did 15 or 20 years ago. But I like to keep my technicians. I like to make sure that they're happy. And I feel very strongly that, their professional development is for you and it's for them. So like, there's got to be a little equal skin in the game. So we actually schedule time during company hours. They get a certain amount of time. Now, let's just do some math here. If something's going to take 20 hours to learn and they get given, an hour or two a week to be able to do that, whatever, they can choose to take that hour or two and spread it out over, 10 or 20 weeks, or they can supplement as well with their after hours time. Now, if they supplement with their after hours time, they're going to get to where they want to go faster. They're going to get to touch things that they want to do faster. So there's got to be a little bit of both. Now, the person who, spreads it out over that longer period of time, that's not bad either. We all have different capacities and we all have different abilities. And I personally believe that if you're asking for them to do something that directly benefits your business, whether that's through having a cert that, brings you to a different partner level, whatever the case may be, then it should be on company time. If you're telling them that something is required for their job, it should be on company time. Now, if it's just for their own whatever, then pay for the cert, pay for the whatever the end stages of that particular demonstration of skill acquired, or pay a bonus for it if you're asking them to do it on their time. But I think that there should be some incentive personally.
So I have this actually kind of dovetails into the previous question in some way. I do like the idea of giving some work time for learning, a couple hours a week, although you have to still get the actual job done. And it's hard to sometimes make that uninterrupted time, which is needed for learning things. That's been a challenge in places I've seen that done. For better or worse, though, when I was coming up, I spent most of my personal time like labbing stuff, right? And there weren't really a lot of VMs back then, or you couldn't really do it very easily. And so I would have like a stack of servers or stack of routers that I spent most of my nights and weekends learning how to do stuff. And for better or worse, my company didn't provide any of that. They gave me some time to do stuff in the office or lab and set up things. They would buy a book or two. For me, that was worth it. Like the time spent doing that is why I'm doing what I'm doing now and why I was so successful with that organization. So the expectation, I think, is yes, like to Amanda's point, if you need it for partner levels or give some time or maybe pay for certs and things, but I kind of expect my techs to have the self desire to continue to learn and get better, right? Like what we were just talking about. The way that you learn to go deep into like weird config options and registry settings and all the minutia you need to be truly successful, like when a weird thing comes up with troubleshooting, to have that brain spark of, oh, I remember seeing what that option does and I was reading the entire manual. That's not going to come from 1 to 2 hours a week of company time, right? So yeah, give company time, but I would like to hire techs that want to get down to that level to begin with.
But honestly, Matt, most people who go into MSP land, who land, like stay there long term, they end up with, home labs and whatever. So like, I feel like that's an organic thing that already is going to happen. So what if you imagine that your employer then said, but also I want you to do this regulated training after hours on your own time as well? It would distract you from the curiosity and exploring your own passion. And that's how you kill people in this industry faster. They're going to do that regardless. If they're good at what they're doing, they're going to do the exact scenario that you described, right? But if you give the structure during the day, and realistically, you're right, it is hard to prioritize. The best way to do that, just for anybody who's listening who wants advice, is your service manager should be blocking off time in their schedule where they're not bookable for tickets and are not expected to be on the phone for that training time, because it is how you make sure that they're able to focus. And if they're having a moment where they feel like they might be like more inspired because everybody's brains works differently, they can reach out to their manager and switch the time if need be, if allocation allows. So just a little tip for anybody who's looking at that. But that's definitely something where there's two kinds of learning, right? There's that structured and then there's that exploration, and that exploration should never be planned. It should be like, they do it. That being said, we do have a test lab. We have a test lab for that very reason, so people can try and learn through doing. So yeah.
No, I'll piggyback off of what Matt said. I was the same way, going like especially when I learned the cloud and stuff like that in Azure. I mean, I spent like almost every night in an Azure book, in Azure Sandbox, learning everything there was to know about Microsoft 365 and Azure. But you can't expect all of your employees to be like that. And I know like our friend Dean calls them like ABC employees, and I think it's not a stretch to say the three of us are probably in that A category, where we're very motivated, driven, willing to do whatever, just because that's how we operate. But that's only about, I believe he says 10% of your team, right? So the vast majority of those B players, which there's nothing wrong with that. You need those people. You need to have the core of those people. So expecting them to do what the A players are doing is not realistic, and expecting after hours isn't realistic. So setting up a training program or setting them up for success where it is the booked time, where you're giving them the resources and not just paying for a cert, but whatever resources that it needs to stoke that curiosity and that professional growth. And also, I mean, if you really want to do it, like throw a KPI around it or something, or metrics or standards or things like that, like setting a professional goal of like, hey, you want to hit whatever this is, this cert, learn this, like we'll give you the tools, the time to do it, but then also hold them accountable for meeting that, and what you can do to help them if it's something you want to go down. So I mean, that's just what I wanted to add in, is if you're going to do it, don't expect it to be the A level people. Build it for the vast majority of your team, because you're always going to have the overachievers, and you can't expect everyone to do that.
Josh, you're bringing up another point that I'm hearing in this question that is an interesting one. So like you're talking about how you approach it for A, B, and C players, but like I look at this question and I'm also hearing like, what's the industry norm? And I think you can't say what a norm is, because I don't know what your team is based on. What if it's all A players? What if it's, more B? Like, I think industry norms and MSP sometimes can be a little misleading because every team has their own makeup. Like, I know my team bucks the trend by wanting to work on site. They would hate if I went to my office tomorrow and I said we're all remote, they would probably cry, right? So like they don't want that, and that's not the norm. We can't always work by the norms for those types of things. You have to look at the team you have in house and see what would fit better for them. Have you asked them what they would appreciate in terms of training and how they would be motivated? Because ultimately, is the training to check a box or is it to advance? Have that conversation with your team.
That is such a good point. I mean, for a while, the org I came from had all of what you just described as A players, Josh. And I'll tell you what, that was not a sustainable model. Many of us burned out. You guys have all heard my own burnout story. It became extremely expensive to keep all of them, to the point where we'd have to like raise client rates significantly to pay them what they're worth. You need A, B, and C players. It was B. I don't know if we want any C players.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer the question that came up in the chat?
I hired my first tech in January. I let him go. 6 months later, I gave him network equipment, PC, Raspberry Pi to make a lab at his house. He never unboxed it. I think that goes back to Amanda's point too of like, I'm not saying you did anything wrong, but did the employee want that? Like, did they make some sort of indication that like, they would use that? It's tough to say. I mean,
but that's where my mind went, was like, if they didn't ask for it, then it felt like, hey, you're asking me to do work after hours, and what am I going to get paid for it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, especially with the younger generation, they're trying to understand what their intrinsic value is and putting in this work. And if the only thing that they can see is that you're going to benefit from them getting better, which is not the right mentality, but nonetheless one that exists, then it wasn't an incentive for them, right? Like, you really have to understand whether or not they're interested in it and what would make them interested, and if that's something that you want them to be interested in.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we got running out of time here, so let's go ahead and move over to the next one. So I wanted to bring this one up as this was the most upvoted post in our MSP. I will be transparent. There was 4 ahead of it, but they were for a particular vendor issue. We don't want to bring that up on the show. So this was the top upvoted one. Please stop. Please stop installing crap like Classic Start menus, iTunes, Evernote on Windows servers. I'd even argue that Chrome shouldn't be going on servers, just use Edge. The number of servers I've seen lately at clients who've taken over from MSPs are similarly using the same 9-9 installer they use on workstations. And why are you even installing all this crap on your workstations? It makes me so mad. Just had to vent, cut it out. So does this rant still hold true?
I mean, I don't disagree. Like, don't install that kind of stuff on servers, but I'm just surprised that that's the most upvoted comment. And don't install it on workstations either, for that matter. Like,
yep.
I don't like doing stuff like that. I know when, what was it, Windows 8 first came out, when Classic Start was big, I saw techs doing this in an attempt to be helpful, but they were really doing a disservice, right? Just help the users get used to the change. On servers, yeah, like none of this stuff should be there. So don't disagree with the post, but I'm just very surprised that nothing else was voted higher than this.
So we had a similar instance actually a couple weeks ago. So the October Windows update killed File Preview and Explorer, and we had a client basically say, "Oh well, this person's husband works in IT and he says to do it. You just need to uninstall the update. We'd like to do that." And we of course were hey, this is a security update. By uninstalling it, you're introducing the security risk back into your environment. Microsoft made this change for a reason. Here's the official documentation on what we can do around it. We apologize, but we're, highly advise against that. But I don't think that would be the same case for all MSPs. I mean, Amanda, not to put you on the spot, but would you have said no, or would you be accommodating and uninstall that? I mean, hold on, going back further, uninstalling Windows updates was a legitimate troubleshooting step. But I think for security, we can't really do that these days.
I mean, you can if the client's willing to accept the risk. And if you yourself educated them on the risk, I think that there's an argument for it. But I don't know that I would do that for the comfort of the business. I think I would do that for if it interrupted how something worked. Like if I don't know if that plugged into something else and then that broke how something else worked.
Yeah.
That's something where I would consider it. Like, I think it just depends, because I think anytime you have change, people automatically bucket. Teams gets a new skin, or Outlook gets a new look, and all of a sudden people go, I hate this thing, right? Because nobody likes change. That's very different to me. Like, rolling back for that purposes sounds stupid, honestly, sorry. But when it impacts how somebody does their job, that's a bit of a different story. And every company, I mean, this is the one problem I have with this post. And I'm going to go against the trend of the two of you who are probably way more security conscious when it comes to this stuff than I am. But I will say that we need to also pay attention to what our clients are saying to us in terms of how they work, right? And we can't just be like, well, I hate them for blah, 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 blah. And like, if we're not listening, if we're not understanding where the issue is or what it is that is going on that's making them so uncomfortable, that's part of the job too, right? Like, it's not always giving them what they want, but it is having that conversation to understand where that is. You can't just automatically say, well, it's not secure, so we're not doing that, right? Like, there's got to be a middle ground where we get to that understanding of what's really going on here. And I know I'm going to say something that's kind of controversial, but when we talk about this new term that gets floated around about MSPs in terms of managed, what is it, Matt? What's MIP? What does it stand for again?
Managed intelligence.
Yeah. MIP, Managed Intelligence Provider.
We are the intelligence that they are connecting to be able to, understand how all of these things work together. And really all you're hearing by someone doing what they want anyway is, I want what I want because I don't understand why that's bad. And I think that we need to do a better job of having those conversations.
Yeah, no. We fully educated, but on that, on the Windows update thing, like Microsoft took it away. Like, it's not going. Like, they're not going to just bring it. Well, maybe they'll bring it back, but at that point, that means you can't install any future updates, right? So
yeah.
But
then you have to look at what is the client going to do? What if they use that, just that preview for a part of their work? I'm not saying that you don't do what you're talking about. I'm saying we got to find the workaround. You have to understand what it is that they're doing that's causing them to be uncomfortable with this change.
No, and I get that too. Is like, is it convenience? Like, oh, we've always done it that way and we don't like it, or hey, is this a business, like a primary way that we do business that is now affected, and we need to temporarily turn it on, find a workaround, work through that, etc. Like, again, it's not just no, take away your, the Cheerios or whatever. But
there are people that are like that though, Josh. Yeah. That's why I look at this and I hear that tone in this post of like, and we hear this a lot in some of these posts, and I'm going to keep saying it every single time. Technicians sometimes talk about clients like they're stupid and like they don't know what they're doing, and like, oh my God, if they would just let me take care of everything, the whole world would be perfect, right? But like, this is not an ecosystem that exists without them. So we need to make sure that we respect the chain of how things go and where everyone's at in that chain. And if they were smarter about it, they probably wouldn't need us, right? Like we just need to keep reminding ourselves about that. So the translation is on us to basically earn our job.
I think the important distinction here is it's not up to us to decide whether something is an inconvenience or a critical business issue. That's up to the client.
Yeah. But you can't know what they're thinking though. You can't help them with that without hearing what the problem is, because you can ask questions and hear a workaround. Now, I don't think there's a workaround per se for this particular issue, but there's certainly other ones that we've come up against where you can hear where the opportunity is and go, okay, what if we did it this way? And they go, well, that would work. And then, you know what I mean? Like, it's just a conversation. We don't decide that, but we help illuminate, just like therapy. No therapist says this is a solution, but they help ask enough questions so that you can hear it for yourself.
Well, and I know Matt and I talked about this, about building cybersecurity culture internally. You can't just be the department of no. It's the, all right, well, no, but how else can we do this? Let's work together to find a solution that fits, trying to do what you're trying to do, but also in a secure manner.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are valid cases where a Windows update is critical enough, even if it doesn't cause can't boot, but if it creates an issue with file preview, if that's critical to the business's workflow, it very well might make sense to accept that risk because they can't make any money or do anything otherwise. And we can advise, but the absolute last thing we can do on something like that is say, nope, you're getting the update, period, right? And it's so common to see that response amongst security people. It's all the time. You'll see stuff like don't draw a hard line, like drop the client, all that stuff. Yeah, you can do that. Risk is for the client to accept or not. Like you're not doing it on the client's behalf, and our job is to inform them so that they can make an informed decision. Ultimately, it's their call, and I think that's the part that we forget about a lot as practitioners.
That's what I'm trying to harp on. I'm so glad that you guys are like echoing this because it's so important. I think too, like we need to remember that if we're going to create the secure landscape that we want to, everybody needs security. We can't just be like only the smartest people who understand exactly what we do and say yes to everything that we say want to are going to get service, right? Like every MSP gets to decide what the level of risk of people they're willing to work with. I'm not going to have, people who want everything wide open and whatever. We have standards. I'm not saying that we don't. I'm just saying though that we do have avenues for people who need some exceptions because we would rather see them be mostly secure than not secure at all.
Well, and if you're like an iron fist and you just go, no, that's just how you introduce shadow IT. I mean, they'll find the workaround. They'll find a way to do their job. So
yeah,
be open to it. All right, we got 4 minutes left. So being as this is the last MSP Community Live of the year, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you guys for coming on and joining us on Fridays, and thank you, Amanda, for being a recurring guest host, and Matt for being also the host of this.
I feel like a guest host given all the shows I missed from traveling.
It gets a little dicey sometimes in the summertime for all three of us. And we unfortunately don't have Henry here. He's with us in spirit, but. For the review, I wanted to kind of go around the room here and just give a top professional, a top personal win, and what a goal you have for next year, whether personal or professional. So, Matt, you're first. You're right there for me.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so top professional win. It's got to be what we pulled off at IT Nation Secure, right? So we took the event that had, I think, started to become a little salesy and not as education focused, and really revived it to the point of being about content first, and it became one of the most well-reviewed conferences that we've had in quite some time. And for me, that was a big deal. That was the first one I was leading and in charge of. So that was a huge professional win, especially now that we're looking to bring that to our global properties. Not a ConnectWise ad, just we're looking to expand what we did there. So I feel good about that professionally. Personally, I'm going to combine it with professional a little bit here. Like, I've upped my running mileage significantly this year and ran through the winter so far, so that's been good. But the big thing is the growth I've seen from being an Evolve facilitator this year. So much satisfaction, personal and professional, from just watching that group grow and expand their capabilities. And it's led to me being better at facilitating. I didn't really have a strong sense of what that was, right? It's easy to mix up facilitator and professor in some ways. And really learning how rewarding that can be was eye-opening. So that was a huge deal for me. And I'm looking forward to doing more of that in the next couple of years.
Awesome. Amanda, what about you?
Professionally, I have to say I'm very glad to have found a home at AVIC. Wearing 3 hats is hard, but it's only possible working at a company that supports that vision and understands where it comes from. And it's never more evident to me than when I was at a recent event where, I'm in my own personal career up for an award for the MSP that I was at. And then I'm also in a room with people who are talking to me about the communities that I support, and then who also I'm having conversations with about how I can be better in my role at AVIC. And just, I think that's also going to be my personal win, to be honest with you. Existing in an ecosystem that has been an incredible support to me through a very tumultuous year personally has been one of the greatest rewards of my life. So try not to get emotional, but I'm very thankful for everyone that's out there. And I think it would take me probably a good 30 minutes to just go through and name every person that I'm thankful for and why, but I'll just leave it at I'm very thankful for being a part of this community.
This is a fantastic community. Any goals for next year?
I'm excited to get these roadshows up and going and start teaching, because that same thing that I said at the beginning of this particular thing is true. I think MSPs really need to go back to basics and make sure that their houses are in order and that they're running things by numbers, both financially and operationally. So I'm really excited to get working on that.
Awesome. Well, I can do mine real quick. Professional win, just a lot of really professional growth for me this last year. But I think the biggest thing is just the speaking engagements I've been able to land and be involved with. It went from like, hey, I've kind of done this on smaller, conferences, to I want to do this to a big conference. To, I mean, at IT Global, I think I was like I need 2 workshops plus another one. So really kind of grown in my own with that. I love doing it. I love helping other people, and speaking is just super fun. So I'm looking forward to doing more of that, next year. But I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I've had this year, and doing a good job with them. Personally, I would say the running has been the biggest thing. The last couple of years have been a little bit rough for me with gaining weight and falling out of running. As I'm looking at like year in the end, less than 200 miles in 2023, less than 200 in 2024, and now at 2025 I'll be just on about 500 miles for the year, doing the 10K,
Nice.
and then I'll be training for a half marathon back in the spring. So, we'll keep on going on that train. I'm so excited for that, and then. Goal next year, again, personal is definitely getting, back on the running train and dropping the weight that I've regained. And then from a professional, keep doing with the conferences and speaking engagements. But one I really want to cross off is I want to get my CISSP. I'm actually like, it's one of those where it's like, I wanted to have it for a while. I know that I can get it. I just need to put the work in. It's really hard for me to dedicate the time to, to do it with everything I'm involved in, plus family, plus everything. But that is my professional goal for this next year, is just finally getting that dang cert.
You can
Schedule
do
the exam. That's how you make yourself do it.
What? Schedule the exam. Yeah. Well, I mean, same thing. How do you run? Well, you schedule your race. So just got to get to it.
Excited to join more regularly in the new year too. I think I was just reminded of the chat that I'm joining. Like permanently, is that the word I'm supposed to use? I don't know.
Perfect. Well, we're a little over, so again, thank you everyone. Have a wonderful, happy holidays, and we will see you next year.
All right.
Bye everyone.
This has been a broadcast of the MSP Media Network.